All right, tonight we're going to be talking about some running performance, pacing, conditioning, all that type of stuff. Talking about pacing strategies, cadence levels, all that good stuff tonight. So, as always, if you guys have any questions, drop them into the chat, whether they were related to the topic or not. Happy to answer it and make sure you guys are squared away with anything you need answers to. But first question is, as my shins have been recovering, I've been doing more supplemental cardio. I'm wondering whether all types of cardio are truly equivalent. For example, does swimming provide the same benefit as running in zone 2? If I swim for 2 hours and keep my heart rate at a steady, moderate pace, is that equal 2 hours of zone 2 running? Tyler, go ahead and answer that one, man.
So, from a simple point, yes. So, from a cardiovascular system, you are doing the same type of work. But when the skill of running gets involved, that's where we would say no. Because why and where we utilize the zone 2 runs? Well, we usually use them 1 or 2 times a week, and that's primarily to kind of get your foot accommodated to smacking the pavement, to bulletproof some of the areas around the knees, the shins, and the ankles. So we're trying to looking for more durability as far as the structure and skill when it comes to running and its applications.
Yeah, perfect. And that's why a lot of times when guys have shin splints and we need to pull back on the impact work, we will increase the low impact work because we can still train that energy system and we can still get the cardiovascular benefits of it. It's not going to be a one-to-one transfer. So when you get back to running, you might feel a little bit heavy. You might feel like you're not super conditioned to that movement anymore, but you're going to have that cardiovascular base. So it's going to come back a lot quicker. And then we can continue to progress beyond that. This is a great question that is going to be highly applicable for a lot of guys. Looking at the new class date, it's going to be hot when I head to selection. Is there anything I can do to help acclimate to that hot weather while I'm in the middle of Colorado winter? So obviously it's going to be cool in Colorado throughout the spring. What can I do to acclimate? Tyler, I'll let you take that and then I'll add on to it my 2 cents.
So, just trying to get some thermo acclimation, it can be done in a sauna, but some of the literature I've looked into, as in trying to do this with myself, is the hot bath actually wins over the sauna because it can rise your temperatures at a faster rate. So, think more intensity with a hot bath, and with the sauna, it takes a lot of time. So if you're short on time and you need a really good quick exposure, you can get in the hot bath and you need to sit in it for at least 5 minutes twice a week, which would give you that 10-minute window of optimization. Um, there's some good things that happen on the recovery side of that. As long as you're hydrating properly, you'll be okay. But you could do the sauna as well. It might just take a little bit longer to make that adaptation because the intensity isn't there.
Hot bath. I did not see that coming, but I like it. Sometimes if I'm super tired or sore or having any issues, I will take a hot bath just to get heat on that area. And I feel hot as shit in like 10 minutes. Like I'm like ready to get out of there, sweating my ass off. So that makes a lot of sense. When
Yeah.
you say 10 minutes, is that 10 minutes throughout the week of heat exposure to start getting the acclimation?
Yeah, so it's funny. I'd have to text old Dr. Christopher Tabor on what the recent research is, but a lot of that 10-minute is kind of the reverse order of the 10 minutes of cold exposure throughout the week. And you can see some acclimation benefits with as little as 10 minutes. Now, with the hot bath, you're really just reaching this really hard peak, and then you're going to stay in it for a little bit, but because the environment isn't the same, for example, that temperature of the water is what it is, and the longer you sit in it, that water's decreasing in temperature, right? And then you have your bathroom temperature, so that you're getting all this interaction. So you're really looking for the intensity of that, and then it's over, and you can stay in it for like 5 to 10 minutes and get some benefit. But after that, the water's just going to get cold and you're going to start down regulating. Where with the sauna, it's the same temperature all the time, or at
Right.
least to a certain degree, right? So it's a little bit longer in duration. If you have the time, there's probably not as much negative effects as like a hot bath can really dehydrate you and it can really neurally suppress you. So if it's something you're doing at like midday and you have stuff to do for the rest of the day, that might not be the modality you roll with.
Got it. So more of like a winding down in the evening type of thing. I like that. All right. Was having some Achilles pain last week when doing my runs. Switched from my ultras with a 0 drop to Hoka's a 5 millimeter toe drop, and definitely helped today. Also, been doing some foam rolling and ankle mobility. Am I going about it the right way? I would say yes. You are absolutely going about it the right way. A lot of times when we make a switch from shoes that have a 5 millimeter drop to 0 drop, you will experience a lot of those issues if it's just like a cold turkey switch to that shoe. So what I like to do, and Tyler is the foot guy, he can talk about the importance of using 0 drop shoes, at least when you're walking around all day. It's not necessarily the best thing if you're experiencing these issues when you're running. Might be beneficial to stick with those ultras, but there can be some long-term benefits to it. We just want to make that transition more gradually than just going cold turkey, because you can have a lot of these issues. So backing off, and then as you're feeling good, we can do things like 2-to-1 calf raises, get a little bit of loaded exposure as you're going to it, but then just introducing that exposure instead of going from 0 to 100. Anything you would add to that, Tyler?
Yeah, I think because we're in such a huge optimization craze that we target fixate on, well, 0 drops are more beneficial. So why don't I always just do 0 drop or be barefoot? And the reality is even though it's optimal, like you you don't do that when you play football, and you're really not going to do that in combat because there's a durability component to your sport that you're playing. So it would be better in the performance realm to have something that's more sustainable. And right now, because of your situation, it's the Hokas. So that is the right choice.
Yeah. And I had a similar issue. I was wearing the Born Primitive trainers, which I really like, wide toe box, minimal drop. But I started getting some plantar fasciitis, and I started having some issues because I made that drop right away. So I went back to a normal shoe. I focused on walking barefoot, focusing on getting an exposure, and then I'm going to be transitioning back into it, but not as cold turkey. So um, you are doing it the right way, my man. All right, next question. How many days are guys on a team typically training? Are they training 6 to 7 days per week, or do they take rest days? Absolutely take rest days. When I was training on a team, I was training 6 days a week. Now, not every day is an all out effort. I was usually lifting 4 days a week, and then Wednesday and Saturday would be conditioning sessions. And for me, when I was on a team, I didn't care about getting my run times down and doing this like peak selection performance. My goal was being able to operate on mission. That was it. Just being able to walk with Kit for hours on end. That's all you do on mission. So the way I liked to train a lot of that conditioning was, well, I lived in the mountains conveniently at 8,500 feet, and I would just go shed hunting. And all that is I would literally pick a point on the map that I wanted to walk through the woods. And then I would walk to that point with, a 35-pound pack on and look for deer antlers. And it was a fun way to get the dog out there, get some exposure. And I was just getting low intensity zone 2 conditioning for hours on end. And that was what I did for a lot of my conditioning on team. So, and you'll see, depends on the goals that guys have, but sometimes we'll have guys do like a shooter's choice session, and that can be getting out in the woods. That can be a good time to get on trail, get exposure, practice your land navigation a little bit, get outside, and stay active. How many days did you guys have operators training at the Special Tactics Squadron?
So I would say, like, at the minimum, guys train 3 days a week. The majority of folks trained, you would say, medium to hard on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursday, Fridays, and did something on Wednesday, kind of like John was talking about, whether they just put a little kid on, put a movie on, and just rip the treadmill for like 2 hours. Like, that's just what they did. And then you would have your diehards that would be full blown 5 to 6 days a week. And that would be combining strength and conditioning every day. But
Love it.
that's maybe like 10%.
Yeah, which is what we're pretty much doing with the operator longevity protocol now. Strength and conditioning every day, 5 days a week, but because it's more spread out, it's not necessarily like you're getting this big, massive fatigue component from each session. So a little bit different
Exactly.
training model. Even changing your running stride before switching can help. I had to switch to a toe first running stride to help with my shin splints and plantar fasciitis. Once symptoms died down, I switched shoes. Love that. And that actually brings me to one of our next questions, which is curious about if my cadence, which is roughly 160 steps per minute, contributes to pain when running. If I fix that, will I get faster? I know it's supposed to be around 180. So I'm going to attack that last sentence first, and then I'll address your question. He said, I know it's supposed to be around 180. 180 is not like a universal, you have to be at 180. Depends on the person, depends on their leg length, all that type of stuff. 180 is a decent place to be if you can sustain it. But even for this individual, going from 160 to 170 can be a great benefit. What happens when we see very low steps per minute or very low cadence is we're taking these big strides and often overstriding. And again, going back to that definition of overstriding, it doesn't necessarily mean you're just thinking about reaching out in front of you. It means at the point of impact, your ankle is in front of your knee and you have a negative shank angle, and that is creating a stopping force that's putting that force of hitting the ground all the way up your leg, leads it to shin splints, knee pain, a bunch of issues. So increasing that cadence can force you to increase and go to a more positive shank angle. So yes, in this case at 160, I would at least try to increase to 170. Doesn't have to be 180 overnight, but increasing that cadence slightly can have a big impact on not only your speed and efficiency, but actually reducing those injuries as well. To add to that question, are all the guys following the same program or same kind of training day to day? Or does the physical training vary depending on different guys and what's happening in their body, etc.? So when you're in group, you have access to strength and conditioning coaches. We had THOR 3 at the 23 STS. They had guys like Tyler that were their strength coaches. Like Tyler was a strength coach for operators, and you can go to them and get custom programs. So that's what I did. That's what a lot of guys do. They also have template programs that you can follow that, mirror the demands of what you're required to do. But if you're training for anything specific, you would usually just go get a custom program. It's usually going to follow a similar structure because a lot of guys on team are doing the same amount of training throughout the week. So distributing that fatigue is going to be the biggest challenge in writing that program, but the movements and the stress and the demands, the mileage are what get manipulated inside of that plan. It depends. And also, like if you have a team sergeant that's really gung ho on doing unit PT, then you might train as a team, but most of the time you're training on your own. Today, for my sprint intervals, I paced myself so that I was running at a hard but repeatable pace. My man, ding, 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 ding. um, instead of running the first one as hard as I could and burning out after the rest. It was more difficult, but felt like I was better getting that stimulus we are looking for. Yes, sir, man, that pumps me up. I would much rather see consistent splits versus like a killer 800-meter repeat and then falling off after that. So it's exactly what we want to see, man. All right. Oh, this is the next question. So perfect. Next, I'll throw this one to you, Tyler. I'm having a tough time maintaining consistent repeat times on the track. It's really windy here and the weather fluctuates a lot. Would the added consistency of a treadmill help me dial in my numbers, or is there another method I can use on the track to get me to where I need to be?
I like the idea of actually using a treadmill here just because it's a very controlled environment. Now, that doesn't mean you should be on the treadmill every session, or maybe not even every week. This might be an every other week thing to just see where you're at in this controlled environment. But ultimately, getting out there and kind of running in the elements, so to speak, will probably have more of a transfer into selection for you. But as far as seeing where your times are at, I actually like the idea of being in a treadmill. If there's tons of wind, rain, um, some of the guys that I'm dealing with right now are like still in extreme cold. So that it's a possibility.
Yeah, I like the treadmill when it's super sketchy outside. I would say if it's just windy in that situation and your splits are going to be lower because of that wind resistance, but the RPE is still going to be there, then making the majority of your sessions on the track and outside are what I would vote for. But like Tyler said, knowing and getting your splits on the treadmill is, and knowing where you're at is going to be a great opportunity to do so. I'm guilty of using treadmills too much. I wouldn't use the treadmill more than, like what Tyler said, 50, 60% of the time. We at least want to get 50% of our runs outdoors. All right. What is a good pacing strategy for the standard AFT 2 mile runs? I find myself often giving way more than usual on the front end and being very winded through my last mile, which eats away my time. Tyler, can you share the one you shared recently, and then I'll share my typical one?
Are you talking about like the training strategy of running those ons and offs? Okay. So the pacing strategy that you could use that teaches you how to kick is essentially trying to run that 7 minute mile. And what we would do is we would say your first lap should be 2 minutes. So your first 400 meters, 2 minutes. And then your second lap would be 90 seconds. And essentially having push push paces and soft paces. And that will give you a 14-minute 2 mile just doing that. But
Yeah.
that tends to be very challenging.
I would use it in training to basically peel back and develop the ability to essentially recover during that run. You're trying
Mm-hmm.
to get the ability to kick back inside of the run. But the pacing strategy that I have always used for PT tests is if I'm going for a 13-minute 2 mile run, for example, that's my goal, then I know I need to be running a 6:30 per mile pace. So on that first mile, I use a negative split. And instead of trying to go all out and running a 5:50 or a 6 minute per mile on that first one, I might run a 6:25. I might run right at that 6:30 mark. And then as I get into this second mile, I start to speed it up. And then I go across the finish line, absolutely, crushing it and heaving and all that shit. But basically just pacing myself on that first mile and making sure that I'm under the standard of my goal, but I'm not burning myself out. What's your opinion on the motorless treadmills versus a traditional treadmill? I like them. I like the motorless ones a lot. They will often increase the RPE, at least for me. Like if I'm using a motorless treadmill, especially the treadmill I have at this gym here, it's like an old one that's really dusty. The belts are probably not very lubed up. Like, dude, I feel so slow on this and I feel like I run on it and I'm absolutely crushed. But then I go to a track and I'm like, this shit is easy. So in my experience, at least on the assault runner, the you might see slower times because the RPE on them is a little bit higher, but I like using the motorless ones versus a actual treadmill, at least for the speed work all day long. All right. Alpar, use that. Used to do that myself until I listened to Tyler and John, and then I started to pace myself in the first mile like a 6:40, 6:45, and on the second lap I turned it up, and then the last 250 meters I just go balls to wall like I'm almost throwing up. Hell yeah, I love it, man. Love the strategy. Working with this has drastically dropped my times. Love it, guys. How about the inverse of a treadmill? I hate the treadmill because it forces me to be consistent with my pace/cadence. Therefore, I never use it. I'm able to keep relatively consistent intervals without it, but should use of a treadmill be something I incorporate in training?
I would say just because you're not being assessed on a treadmill, that it's not necessary. Um, but if you feel like it's going to force you to be consistent with your pace, it's worth maybe trying once in a while.
Yeah. I would almost challenge you to like, if it forces you to be consistent with your pace and you don't like being consistent with your pace, I would say almost lean into it if you get the opportunity. Like, obviously, get the majority of our runs outside, like Tyler talked. You're not going to be tested on the treadmill, um, but keeping a consistent pace on those 5 mile runs, for example, can be a big benefit. So, yeah, I mean, I would explore it, but it doesn't need to be a crutch. Maybe like once every 10 runs, you can kind of test yourself on it a little bit. All right, pacing for the assault bike. No pacing, dude, all out. I mean, almost honestly, usually when we're incorporating the assault bike, it's not necessarily to get zone 2 benefits like Tyler talked about last week. Trying to get zone 2 on the assault bike can almost create more fatigue in your quads that it almost like degrades the session or adds additional fatigue. So a lot of times when we are incorporating the assault bike, especially for things like 15 seconds on, 40 seconds off, or 100 calories for time or whatever, like we are focusing on that anaerobic energy system, and we want you to be super high intensity. So that's like the benefit of the assault bike. Pacing, hopeful wishing. No pacing. Send it. Tyler, would you have anything to add to that, or
Nah, just whenever you see the assault bike, just know that me and John want to hurt you. So
and hurt ourselves too. Every Friday, in our Tyler and I are running the same program right now, and every Friday we have assault bike in there, and we always text each other like, "I'm about to throw up. I hate myself for doing that." So we like to torture ourselves too. It's not just you. I'm all out and want to do it through it. Hell yeah, man. So it's brutal, but it makes you better. All right. When doing zone 2, normally I stay in zone 2, but this leads me to jogging at a 15-minute per mile pace. Should I have a higher heart rate and increased pace, or keep as is? What is the best way to progress my zone 2 runs to make them feel faster paced?
well, I would say the best thing that you can do is start to try to increase your skill in running. So it's maybe working on some technique might be the best thing if you want to see a better pace for your zone 2. I think some of the problems that our guys have is they're not treating the zone 2s like a zone 2. They're just treating it like a normal run, and you want your normal run to be fast. So you end up pushing it and maybe not getting all the benefits of the zone 2 that you might normally get starting off. So maybe having a coach look at your run form, trying to look at your shin, or Coach John calls it shank angle, making sure that your posture is well off, and then also making sure that you're relaxed in your run. So that means your body and your jaw should be nice and relaxed, that you could actually see. If you watch sprinters when they sprint, you can see their lips and their mouth like bobble because they're keeping everything relaxed. Or if you feel like you're a runner that shrugs a lot, just trying to learn how to relax your traps while you move will decrease that time for you.
Yes, and RP. This is like the biggest one, actually. I've done probably 6 or 7 running form reviews this week, and I think 5 of them, everyone is running like this. They're super stiff, and it's just going to create a lot of energy, and it's going to reduce that entire flow. And a lot of times when we're like this, we're not running with our hips nice and open, keeping those shoulders nice and tall. So 100% stay relaxed. I would also ask you, what are you using for your zone 2 range? Because a lot of times guys will use their Garmin. Garmin is probably the worst way to do your zone 2, because they just go off of your age. 220 minus your age times 0.60 for the bottom end times 0.70 for the top end. For guys that, for the general population, that's good. That's okay. But for guys that train and they actually get after it, we have that relative fitness levels that we want to factor in. So we can either use the Carvonen method, which I really like, which for most guys lands them in the heart rate of 140 to 148 for a 25 to 30-year-old man. Or we can do the Maffetone method, which is just 180 minus your age, and that's your max aerobic heart rate. And we can just keep it under that. So we don't need to overthink keeping your zone in this perfect zone. We just want to keep it easy so you can nasal breathe. We want to keep it, you can generally hold a conversation 15 to 20 words without gasping for breath. And it's just an easy effort. And then we can use those things to kind of verify it. All right. Next question is, what is a good alternate for the assault bike if we don't have access to one? So I'll touch on this, Tyler. So when we use the assault bike, we are getting low impact conditioning in. That is training our energy system, and we're never going to be tested on the assault bike at any selection we do. So if you don't have an assault bike, we just look for another form of low impact conditioning. So if you have a regular bike, we can do it on there. If we have a rower, we can do it on there. If we have, if we have a, what do they call them? The freaking not the stair climbers.
Versa climber.
Versa climber. Those are freaking nasty. So there's a lot of different things that we can do if we don't have an assault bike. Do you have a go-to, Tyler, for when someone does not have an assault bike?
Yeah, like super minimalist, I go kettlebell swing. Or I go some type of a walking lunge, just something that can build up the metabolites quickly and not bash their leg. But usually I go with a kettlebell swing.
Love it. Would you go heavier weight or moderate weight and higher intensity?
I'd go heavier weight than normal. So like, let's say 50 pounds generally for most guys. And let's say they need to get 20 calories on the bike. I would be like, we're swinging it 30 times. So it's going to take longer. It'll be nasty. And maybe, let's say if it's 15 seconds on, 45 seconds off, I might have a guy swing a kettlebell for 20 seconds and be like, all right, 40 seconds rest, hit it again.
Love it. It's awesome. Arthur said the Versa Climber sucks. Yes, it does. If you guys have a Versa Climber, it looks silly. You can be like, oh, who uses that shit? But if you hop on that thing, you're going to be humbled real quick. Tyler, what are your thoughts on Epsom salt baths for general recovery? Are they beneficial at all or more curated for specific applications and or injuries?
I absolutely love them. I just don't think people have enough salt. So if you go to like the store and buy an Epsom salt bag, I think it's Dr. Teal's is like the real popular one. You can get it like Walmart or something. It'll have like the serving size. I would have to look at the actual literature, but I know it's probably 2 to 3 times the recommended dose for you to absorb the amount you need. But yes, Epsom salt is incredible. I've seen them done wonders with gnarly looking feet after horrible assessment rucks. The story of it is pretty spectacular. Just how these, what do you call them? Greek athletes, they used to train up high on a hill and they would walk down to these salt pools and that's how they would recover. And that's where the Epsom salt kind of just got started, was just salt helps you recover.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Usually doing Epsom salt. So if I was going to do a soak, I usually do it like once a month. I actually take like a whole bag and just dump it in there. I get the water nice and hot, and then I use a little bit of liquid magnesium because I want that to come in through my pores as well. So you're going to absorb it if you stay in it long enough and if the water's warm enough. But yeah, if you're a big guy, like if you're 185 pounds plus, you're going to need quite a bit of salt.
Good insights there. I just got back from Korea about 3 weeks ago into Fort Carson, and I'm still struggling with running less than a 9-minute per mile pace. I feel stagnant. Maybe it's the elevation. Yes, especially if you came from sea level at Korea. I know many of the places are pretty low elevation wise there to Fort Carson, which I believe is like 5,500 feet, 6,000 feet. Maybe if you're in actual Colorado Springs, that will have an impact. And like we've talked about, you are not going to get the benefits of living in altitude for a period of time. Your body, the way we get the benefits is your body creates more red blood cells to transfer that oxygen throughout your system. So it takes a lot of times months of living somewhere for your body to start to truly acclimate to that elevation. And then you'll start seeing those run times come down. So, yeah, it's more than likely the elevation. I would stay consistent, stay patient with it, and just know it's going to take some time to get used to it. When I first got out to Fort Carson, so I was in 10th group, I did the same thing. Went for a run. I was like, I remember moving into my house, bringing stuff out of the truck, and I was like, dude, I am winded right now. What is going on? And a lot of it was that elevation. Currently speaking with an active recruiter to swap from Guard 91 Bravo to Active 18 series. Is there any specific questions or demands y'all recommend voicing? Guard to active duty. So are you going, how does it work for going for someone that's already in the guard? You should have to go to selection first, or are you going in 18X? Drop that down in there. Cool. All right. So he's a soldier in the National Guard, and instead of going to SFRE and going to selection through the National Guard, he's dropping that and going 18X active duty. So there was not anything specific that you need to voice. I wouldn't say like you need to look out for. One of the big things that I have been seeing recently is guys almost having issues with that. Maybe they had something on their medical record, especially with the implementation of Genesis. It's been atrocious for guys. So if you are working with a recruiter that tells you no for anything or pushes back, like ensure that you are being the squeaky wheel and you don't just take that first no at face value. But as far as getting in the 18X pipeline, there's not really a whole lot you need to negotiate. You can ask them if you're going to airborne after OSIT. I know they made some rumors about switching that process. I don't know. Nobody really knows when or if that is going to happen. So that's a question you can just kind of check out, but nothing real concerning about making that jump. Korea air quality is nasty sometimes too. Yeah. I believe that. All right. How do I get into a rhythm with running and control my breathing at faster paces? I would say you first start practicing this at slower paces. I like to use a 3-to-2 or sometimes a 3-to-3 ratio, depending on how fast I'm running. For my tempo runs, it's like a 3-to-2. What does that mean? Well, I count my paces every time my left foot hits the ground as 1, and I will breathe in for 3, and I will breathe out for 2. And I match my breathing with my paces. For me, that has always been the easiest thing to do. And whether I'm running zone 2 or I speed up to a speed session, I can get into that rhythm really quick, and it prevents me from having my breath or my breathing bounce all over the place. So I would start on your zone 2 runs with a 3-to-3. So every time your left foot hits the ground, again, is 1 pace. You breathe in for 3 paces. You breathe out for 3 paces. You breathe in for 3 paces. You breathe out for 3 paces. If you feel like you need to get the air out, then you can breathe in for 3, breathe out for 2. Breathe in for 3, breathe out for 2. And as you get used to it and start speeding up your paces, you should be able to find that you can get into that rhythm quicker and maintain it for longer. Also, the thing I would say about breathing is it's a really good way to calibrate paces. When you go to selection, you're not going to be able to run with a watch. So if you can calibrate your breathing to the speed that you run on those tempo and those zone 2 runs before going to selection, you can rely on that breathing a little bit to have an idea of how fast you're running in the RPE once you get out there. All right. Next question. Would it be better to increase pace on tempo runs or to increase distance but maintain pace on tempo runs when easing back into it?
I would say always work on maintaining your pace when you're easing back into it, but not being truly focused on, oh my gosh, I'm behind. I need to add more distance. I need to add. I think the most important thing is you to just try to come back online and just have the ability to maintain a certain pace. Once you feel that you're pretty confident in doing that and you've stacked on a session or two, then you can start worrying about the intensity and trying to get your times driven down. Because when we're coming back, we're truly just trying to gauge our sustainability of training. Am I that out of shape? Am I that deconditioned? How's my chassis? So those first couple of sessions are all about just learning where you're at. So I would try to hold off on high intensity.
Yeah. And when we're coming back from an injury, our goal is to keep it sub tolerance. So that means not running to the point we start feeling that pain, but being disciplined with cutting it off. One of the biggest things I see with guys coming back from shin splints or any issues is they go out there and they run until they have pain. And they're like, oh man, I got pain at 40 minutes, but they didn't have any pain at 25 or 30 minutes. So our goal is to keep it sub tolerance. If someone can go out there and run 20 minutes, cut it off. That's a win for the day. Like you just got quality exposure, didn't run to pain, didn't flare anything up. Now, next time we go run, we can either repeat that one more time or we can increase by 3 to 5 minutes and see and make sure that we keep it sub tolerance, cutting it off before we get that pain signaling and then continue to progress from there. Just got off work and tomorrow I have my final PT test before I ship off to Camp McCall. Hell yeah, man. Pump for you. Definitely meant to spell it like that. McKill. Oh, my bad, dude. I butchered it for you. Dang. Camp McKill. I'm so indoctrinated at calling it the right thing. I just auto-corrected. I defaulted, dude. Is it good to work the plan tonight, or should I take a chill pill to maximize my effort for the test on the run? Definitely take a chill. Definitely take a chill pill prior to a PT test. We want to rest and make sure that you are 100% showing up to it. So if anything, get some light mobility work, light stretching, don't need to go crazy, quality food, quality hydration, plenty of rest, and then go crush it tomorrow. And then if you're feeling good, we can go from there, but no need to go crazy. All right. Now this was a good question for the snow question we had earlier with the treadmill. At what temperature range would it be considered unsafe to run outdoors for you, Tyler?
And the answer would be the temperature in which you are not acclimated to run. So it'd be interesting if you asked that to someone in Africa or Hawaii with the humidity. It is all depends on your acclimation. I'm sure high school football two-a-days exist out where you are, John, in the
Yes.
middle of the summer, just
Yeah.
like they do here in San Antonio. But if I took a bunch of kids where I'm from in Baltimore, Maryland, they're going to die. And that's just because they don't have the acclimation. So it's really a tipping point of if you go out there and you start your dynamic warm-up and your body starts pinging the red flags. And what does that mean? You have excessive sweating. The definition of that is you're sweating way more than usual. Then you can get into like a fatigue brain sensation of like you might be like kind of hazy about like, oh, let me go back to my phone. How many reps do I have today? Or how many 400s? And you're just kind of like off. And then during that first warm up around the track, maybe you take a little jog before you start your dynamic warm up. If your body is telling you like it's probably not going to work out, then it's best to just go into a gym somewhere and find a treadmill. But you should, if it, let's say if you're used to 95 degrees and it's 102 degrees, is it possible that that's too hot for you? Yes, it's possible. But maybe you've spent enough time in 90 plus temperature to where it'll be fine. But if you didn't hydrate well for the past 2 days, if you're a little bit sleep deprived, you got a lot of stress going on, then the acclimation stuff kind of gets degraded. And because of your fatigue state, so this is just all fatigue management, guys, that I'm talking about. Managing your fatigue can ultimately help your resilience in heat or cold.
Yeah.
The end.
And I would also say on the flip side of that, there's guys that are stationed up in Alaska that run all winter long. So you can run pretty cold. A lot of times I've heard of guys that aren't allowed to take off their face masks because it's so cold that if you take your face mask off, the sweat is going to cause issues and get guys, sick and obviously injured. So you can run it pretty cold, but it's just getting acclimated to it. I would say for most guys, especially right now, if it's like so cold outside that it's icy or you can't breathe, you freaking like what Tyler said, you're just not acclimated to it, you don't have the right clothes, etc., then it could be beneficial, but you're going to have to perform in those types of environments. So what I like to do is wear some sweats, get a prolonged warm up out in that environment, and then almost get not a sweat, but a light sweat to the point where we're nice and hot, and then start that run in those colder environments. All right. Said, why is it that I can run a 5:57 pace for two 400-meter laps, rest in between the laps, but I can't run that pace for a continuous 1600-meter? Does that make that much of a difference in being able to run that pace again? Yes, the rest does make that much of a difference in being able to repeat that pace again. And why do we want the paces to be repeatable? Well, we are teaching our body to maintain that level of output and maintain that quality of technique with those intervals. So if we were to just go out there and try to crush a 400-meter interval and we have form breakdown, we start rounding, we start reaching with all of our steps, there's no freaking way we're going to be able to maintain that for longer intervals. So when we run these intervals at a consistent and repeatable pace, then over time, the distance that we can maintain that effort or pacing continues to increase. So it's just a matter of getting that consistent exposure to it, working on technique, working on, quality effort in these high intensity sessions. And then as you continue to progress, you'll see the pacing on that 1600-meter run continue to improve, and match what you could previously do on those 400s. But your 400s, you're going to continue to improve as well. All right, what body fat and FFMI or fat-free mass index would you like, or do you like to see for people going to selection? So let's focus on body fat percentage. What's the range that majority of guys you have seen go and crush different selections be in?
12 to 15% body fat, and more harping towards the 15% body fat would be the most optimal.
Yeah. Why is higher body fat more optimal than just being 8% shredded?
Because at 8% shredded, everything's much more expensive. So every move you make requires fuel. And because you're leaned out, you have your soft tissue, water, and glycogen. So once that glycogen is over, it's going to take from somewhere, and it's probably going to be you, as in your muscle mass. And it's not good to do that for a selection. I've even in my time training some guys for some tier 1 selections who were just leaned out, shredded, I was like, we're going to get you a little fluffy before you go. And it's always immediately the first 3 weeks they lose 8 pounds. And then the next 2 or 3 after that, it just, it's degrading. What you're about to do is degrading. So you need the fuel stores, the energy stores to withstand anything for as long as possible. We also know on a hormonal level, just the way the endocrine system works with each other, when you're at a particular body fat percentage, in the sports world, it's about 9% and down. Now, there's freaks out there, professional freaks. They don't count. I'm talking like in college sports and high school sports. Anything below 9% body fat, we see that as an injury risk. I know myself as an Olympic weightlifter, staying small to stay in a weight class, I was plagued with injuries like crazy, and that was self-induced. But once I came out of that, I got back up to a normal, let's say 11 to 12% body fat, and I'm much healthier, much healthier.
Yeah. I was typically, when I was at my best, well, even now, I pretty much live at like 12, 13%. But typically in the military, when I was at my best, I was between 12 and 13%. And there was a good study done. The research was collected between 2015 and 2017, I believe. The study wasn't actually published until 2022. I just referenced it with a hypertrophy video we put out. But it talked about body mass and its relation to performance at SFAS. And they found that leaner guys tended to perform better on the PT tests, and guys with higher lean mass tended to perform better on rucking events. And overall, they found the kind of median or sweet spot was about 15% body fat was the point in which guys could go the distance and also have the performance numbers to be competitive throughout that. So about 15% is a good metric to shoot for. I've heard mixed reviews about training with the THOR program for active duty soldiers getting ready for SFAS versus people going 18 X-ray and doing SFRE before selection. I kind of had mixed experiences with THOR as well. I don't want to, talk trash about anybody. And well, let me back up. When I first started training for selection, I was in the 160th and we had THOR 3. So I went to my THOR 3 coach and was like, I'm training for selection. This is what I want to do. And he absolutely did the right thing. He did a mobility assessment on me. He checked out all my stuff and he gave me a program that included a lot of mobility and less of the stuff that my ego driven, 20-year-old self wanted to do. So I did it for 2 weeks and I discarded it. I was like, it's not hard enough. So he did the right thing. But I have had THOR coaches not necessarily be that in depth, I would say. And sometimes it might just be because they're overworked. They have big events coming up. They have 500, athletes that they're trying to cater to at one given time. They're overworked. They're underpaid. There's 2 coaches there and there's an entire unit. So, the experiences may vary, but the one at the 160th was solid. Other times in my career, I was like, I kind of want to twist this up a little bit. But oftentimes, and this is something that obviously we integrate for a lot of guys, and sometimes guys don't do it. I wish you guys would, but mobility work, stuff on the warm-ups. Tyler and I just did a podcast talking about it yesterday. And that stuff is very important because durability is not just being able to ruck and move the weight and being strong. It's about putting your body in those optimal positions. And if I would have listened to that THOR coach when I was a little bit younger, it probably would have addressed some of those movement issues that came back to bite me, not when I was going to selection, but when I got to a team down the road. So they can be beneficial, and it's just kind of hit or miss. Obviously, there's different individuals at each station. All right. Could I do easy, short zone 2 runs every morning?
I would say, what's the definition of short? Like, because our zone 2 runs, let's say, average anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes on average. So the definition of short would be 10 minutes. So if we're going to put it in that context, what if I did 10 minutes of short zone 2 runs every day or every morning? I would say in the beginning that could wield you some benefit, right? There's some resilience over time. There's definitely exposure there, but the exposure might not have the intensity that we're looking for, and the skill acquisition that we're looking for. So yes, in the very beginning, maybe the first 2 to 3 weeks, you would see some positive yield from this. But over the long haul, as you become a little bit more experienced, you're going to find that this route is probably not the most optimal.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same thing with, it's always on Facebook. I don't know why on Facebook, we got a bunch of like boomers that comment on our shit. And it's always like the guys that are like from the 70s and they're like, you just need to wear a ruck every day, all day long. And it's like, that would be beneficial for somebody in the very beginning, but you never prolong that exposure. You never get better at moving faster under that load. You never increase it, do different things with it. So you never progress past a certain point. It can get you generally prepared just for being able to wear weight, but it's not going to increase your performance numbers. And obviously when we talk about training for selection, that is what we are focused on. All right. Not having a track available, would you recommend to use the treadmill more often on your runs than running on concrete to prevent impact injuries on your joints and shins?
Yeah, I would have to say yes for this just because I'm a little bit older, so I understand. But there is still a lot of benefits that you're going to get running on the concrete that the treadmill is just not going to have. And that actually is the impact. So maybe you're a little bit more tactical with the terrain and understanding that, okay, if I'm going to run on the pavement, I'm going to make these nice, easy zone two runs happen on the pavement. But anytime tempo is coming in, intensity is coming in, and I really need to start cooking, I'm probably going to go to the treadmill. And that would just be a good way of averaging out some load demand because you need that. Your shins need some impact. Um, and then bringing the treadmill in because obviously we got to get faster.
Yeah. And for you, Alpar, I would also say I know you're out in North Carolina, and there's a lot of good, well maintained trails around there. So if you can find like a compact, well maintained dirt trail, that can be just as good as a track as well. All right. What are the ways you like to increase mileage from around 10 to 20 to 30 miles per week? All at once. No, I'm just kidding. Not all at once. There's a rule of thumb that says you can increase by about 10% week over week. And if you follow that, you will be safe. But for a lot of guys, you can kind of out progress that slightly. Our goal is still to keep it sub tolerance, but yeah, what I find with younger guys that can recover well is usually 15% week over week until you start getting into those higher numbers. Then it will slow down the rate at which you increase it. Is a solid way to do it. It just, the biggest thing is being disciplined with it. Because one bad run or one like, hey, I feel great today at 6 miles, I'm going to go for 12. That like one instance individuals can flare up a lot of injuries. Then you're battling for 4 weeks. And because you want to continue to run through it, it continues to spiral. And that is usually where guys run into issues with increasing mileage, not just increasing the weekly mileage as a whole. All right. How to still get a good workout in when you have been doing shit since 5 a.m. So you wake up at 5 a.m., work all day, and then you try to work out after the session or after the work day. Maybe you feel a little depleted. What are some tips you would give someone to still get a quality session in?
Okay. I think the best thing that you could do is dialing in your preparation. So, what does that mean? You've had a long day. The longer you're in the weight room, the more it's just going to zap you. So, I would kind of treat this like someone who's coming in the gym really early in the morning as well. I would try to eliminate a lot of the time rolling on the ground, foam rolling, doing things that, yes, they may be therapeutic and may help open you up, but they also may be neurally depressing you. And let's be real, at that time of the day, you don't have much gas left in the tank. So you'd have to be very methodical about what type of warm up you're going to do. It still needs to be thorough, but I'm saying that maybe because in this certain situation on this day, you may need to cut some corners. And that might also be, hey, let's say I know I should be doing some banded mobility stuff for my hip, but I just want to get in and start my warm up. So I'm going to skip all the banded work in the beginning, but still hit my warm up. And when I get to back squats while I'm resting, I'm going to be doing that banded mobility. So I'm going to try to fit it in so that I'm still doing the work, but I'm just kind of optimizing my time so I can get on the bar quicker because I need to prioritize how much energy I have left and understand how much stress I'm in. And then I would also talk about just maybe some load and volume management at that point. I was talking to John earlier about I've wielded some pretty good results by only doing 1 to 2 working sets when there was 3 to 4. So maybe just understanding that as well of like, hey man, I'm going for 2 quality working sets here, and then I'm moving on to the next one.
But Tyler, you need 3 working sets to progress.
No,
Joke.
you don't.
Just a joke. I like what Bridger said. He said, also got to skip the social media that day. Totally drains you. 100%, guys. Just like mental bandwidth, mental energy is still going to drain your energy, drain your focus, and make you feel more depleted and tired and irritable, especially with everything going on in the world. Get off of social media. This is coming from someone that posts social media and, you know, posts on social media every day. Get off social media. Stop watching my shit. No, I'm just kidding. Watch my shit. No, I'm kidding. But
Clip that. No.
I use an app called Opal. It's a really good app, and you can set it up. I have it on like hardcore mode to where certain hours of the day I can't access the apps that I've given it. So I can't access Instagram, TikTok. I can't access Facebook, YouTube. I can't access any of that shit except for like 2 hours throughout the day, and that's when I do all my posting. So Opal is a really good way to limit that social media exposure if you find yourself doom scrolling and casually picking up your phone. If you guys want to be shocked by something, go to your settings on your phone right now and go to screen time. And if you scroll down, it'll show pickups. And that just tells you how many times you pick up your phone throughout the day. And most people pick up their phone like 150 to 200 times a day. And when I saw that number, I was like, brother, I'm getting rid of this freaking thing. So Opal is a really good way to kind of combat that. What is y'all's strategy for balancing runs, swims, rucks for athletes training for water-based selection / courses? Seems like I'm the only one not training for SFAS. No, you're not the only one not training for SFAS. And we got Austin, our SEAL coach, on a podcast a couple weeks ago. He's actually coming out to Arizona next week to do a range day, and we're going to be doing some WaterCon stuff. He's going to be drilling me on the combat side stroke, so that's going to be very embarrassing. But it's going to be a good time, and we'll get him integrated. I think one of the reasons why most of the guys come on the live calls that are training for SFAS is because it's mostly me and Tyler. So once we start getting Austin and Jerry integrated with the live calls as well, we'll have more of the Buds and BORTAC guys and Air Force Special Warfare, those guys joining on the calls as well. So it's not just you. There's quite a few guys actually. Tyler, you want to talk about we always talk about integrating runs and rucks into a strength-based program. You want to talk about integrating swims as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a ton of swimming on the Air Force side. So very familiar with the water-based training. So what it all comes down to is frequency. And right now, looking at the majority of the plans that are at bay here at Infinite Grit, I think the best day, if you're only going to go once a week, is Wednesday, or completely removed to Sunday. So it's all by itself. You have all the time in the world. Once you start bringing on a second session, I like to do it on Monday. And just because it fits in really well with some zone 2 work that you can get in the pool. Working to 3 days a week, that's when I start to change things out around quite a bit. I usually work Monday, Friday, and then Sunday. And then for your 4 days a week, it would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday. I'm always going to keep Saturday out of it because rucking is always going to be king on that day. Just because it's usually a day in the schedule to where you can still wake up early, you're in a flow of the week, you can get your warm-up in, and then it's just going to be very time-consuming. So that's why I like it. I also really like it because Saturday, when we look at the consumption of calories in the week, most Americans consume the most amount of calories on a Saturday. So it just works really, really well for rucking.
Yeah, love that. All right, next question. Should I expect to run the time 2 mile and the time 5 mile on the same day at SFAS? No. This is, and I often talk about this in regard to SFRE. A lot of times, SFREs are harder than gate week at SFAS because you do a 2 mile run, you do a 5 mile run, you do land nav, you get smoked, you do some pool work, which doesn't even exist at SFAS. And then you do a team week event with a 12-mile ruck. Like, you do a ton of work in a very condensed timeline. When you go out to selection, you're going to be bored through gate week. You're going to have your initial PT test on day one. You have a short run or a short run, short ruck, long ruck, etc. throughout the week, but you're only doing one event per day. And then at the end of the week, you'll do the obstacle course, the CRA, and then you'll go out to land nav. So like that first week of gate week, almost everybody that comes back is like, dude, I was bored at gate week. Like we had a ton of time to just sit there and recover and think about, being away from home and all this stuff. So no, you will not be doing the runs on the same day, and you will get ample amount of recovery between those. You will get ample amount of time between those, not necessarily ample amount of sleep. They'll still keep you up, and you only get, 4 or 5 hours of sleep per night. So that's the challenge, but it's not necessarily the time aspect. All right. Last question. This is from Alpar. Calling you out, brother. Can you talk about the program/protocol that was created for extending the operating life of an operator, and how would that translate or how would it apply to me? So with the protocol that you and I are running right now, what are the big focuses that we are looking to address that most operators experience inside of their careers? Myself included.
Yeah, so I would say at the heart of this program is the focus on mobility, but not the way you may think. So when I think mobility, I think of all the joints should flex, extend, and rotate if they're able to. Like the knee can't rotate. So and then we think about it more globally. Well, the body in certain archetypes should be able to flex, extend, and rotate. So it's really about prioritizing movement efficiency. So what we find is operators have horrible rotation. Why? Because their sport does not demand a lot of rotation. And what happens after a long time of doing that, there's tons of aches and pains associated with that. Also, we prioritize like what's called joint stacking. So I look through the lens of an operator through the ankle, the knee, the hips, and the shoulder. So I start prioritizing movements and the volume of those movements based on those joint systems. So we start, instead of looking at this global stress, we start looking at segmental stress through the body. Most of the movements that you may find in there tend to be very hard because they're putting John in a position that he's not used to. So he's going to see a lot of rapid gains from that. He's going to be pretty stressed out. Like it's not easy. And that's primarily because he's unfamiliar with the position.
Yeah, I'm actually sitting on a YouTube video that I haven't posted yet because dude, that I look like shit in this. So I spent, and this is like, kind of our blind side of like why it's important to think about this stuff is I went years without focusing on any rotation, flexion, extension, anything like that. So when Tyler came and did his assessment on me, one of the first things that he assessed was my extension, which was absolutely terrible. And that first weekend, we built the program, and then we filmed one of the sessions, and I did a wall walkover that was like embarrassing. Now I sent him a video today, and it's like 50% improved. So it can improve rapidly, and that is, at least in my experience, what I struggled with throughout my career, and probably led to some of my injuries, and what a lot of guys have, because we get so focused in performing here instead of giving our body exposure to different movement patterns and angles and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Last thing, go ahead.
Sorry, just to copy. It's way more resiliency focus than it is performance focus. But by someone who's more mature, just by cleaning up his resiliency, I will have improved his performance or his output. So now John might be able to access more power when he goes and plays baseball, or he might have more durability on a long hunt, just because I'm giving him more optimization of his body. But it doesn't mean in the sessions we're trying to hit these performance numbers like y'all. It's kind of a definitely a way different 180 degrees approach to training, and it's probably not the best thing for selection.
No,
because it's
no.
probably not going to get you where you need to be to hit the mark.
Right. But after selection, once you're on a team, that's
Oh,
the
it's
reason
the
for its
bread and
implementation.
butter.
Yeah. Our last thing that Bridger is going to leave us with, which is really, really good advice. And he says, unless you have a real deal diver or other water-based rate/MOS with you, never, never, never do any breath work in the pool. You can practice breath holding out of the pool, so dry land breath holding work, and it's not worth risking your life. Also practice having a filled mask outside the pool. I used to go for 3-mile runs with a mask full of seawater. Interesting. I've never heard of somebody doing that. I like that. That's some stress inoculation shit right there. When I say that mask means nothing if you train, I mean you can get used to anything. Love that, Bridger. And 100%, guys, with any of the underwater work, breath work, anything like that, do not do it unless you have a lifeguard, like someone trained to get you out of the water and resuscitate you if you freaking black out, because no reason to have any shallow water blackouts or put your life on the line in a training environment. Should we integrate some of these in the workout program, even though I am not on the tail end of prep because being an older guy? Yeah, for you, Alpar, I would say for most of the younger guys training for selection, we're already doing so many different movements and things on a daily basis that adding a lot of these things can just become detractors or take so much time that we can't get to the things that really matter. So that's why we don't include a lot of it in that. But for you, especially with aches and pains that you and I have talked about, we can work a little bit of them in there or adjust the warm-ups to include those more, longevity style movements to address it in the program for you. So yes. Speaking on breath work, Deep End Fitness highly recommended them for breath work and CO2 tolerance. Deep End Fitness is solid, guys. We've had probably 3 or 4 guys integrate with Deep End Fitness and will program around their days going out there, and they get really good results from Deep End Fitness. Those guys know what they're doing, and that is an environment to do that because they have all the staff and all of the support on deck. So if you have a Deep End Fitness near you, it can be beneficial to integrate that as well. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you guys for joining in. If you guys have any questions, anything on our end throughout the rest of the week, do not hesitate to reach out. I'm going to be traveling this week, so I might be a little bit slower to respond. I still will dedicate time in the morning and evenings to get back, but during the day, it might be a little bit slower. Just heads up on that. Otherwise, let's finish strong, and I will talk to you guys very soon.